I haven't done a video like this in a little bit, and Marathon just had a 2 hour behind closed doors presentation. And they basically said, hey, look, you can't record this, you can't do anything with this, but you can. There's no embargo on it. So I thought I would do a real quick recap. I also did this over on Twitter. I have this big long thread where I was typing as fast as I could. It's riddled with typos, but that's kind of what you do when you're trying to do this quick and on the fly. Long story short, we got some really interesting updates about what their goals are with Marathon and what Marathon will be at launch versus what it is now in alpha. Let's talk about it. So if you didn't know, I'm doing this show. It's called Exfil Chat. We talk about Marathon and we talk about, Bungie's latest extraction shooter. We might end up doing something around Destiny. Time will tell on that front. But this is about Marathon. I have probably 20 hours of gameplay in the Marathon Alpha now. I have been playing it basically in every spare moment so that I could talk about Bungie's latest game. Bungie and I have been tied together since I started my career in some capacity. I've always talked about their property since back in the Halo 3 days. But during this interview, we learned a lot about what's going on with Proximity Chat and these big community asks. And I used Tau Ceti GG quoted me, so I'm quoting them, quoting me back. But they made some nice graphics. So let's talk about what was said during this call. Long story short, Marathon Game Director gives update on Proximity Chat. They basically said, we probably can't solve Proximity Chat for launch, but we've always been looking at it. We're still trying to figure out how to do it and what form it will take in our game. Probably not for launch because there are things in the compliance and safety side. It's not for lack of not wanting it. It's more about how to implement it. Now, most of the quotes we're going to read are from Joe Ziegler. There was a gentleman there named Witz. I can't remember his full name off the top of my head, but he was on the presentation stage talking clearly about what their goals are with Marathon. And there was also a third person who was introduced like during the middle of the call, and he had a weird tag, so I couldn't remember his name. And of course, somebody who I've known for a long time, Lars Bakken, was also there talking about the PvE elements. Now, Proximity Chat has been a big ask for a lot of people. And in my opinion, I think this game needs to have it. And it sounds like Bungie actually agrees and wants it. They are a little bit worried about how they implement that on console and PC. But Bungie, if you're listening, this is something I want. This is something the whole community wants. I think you know that. And I think people are aware of what you're trying to do there. In addition to that quote, a lot of people have commented about how really interesting and visually unique the interior spaces are, but how the exterior spaces are really, really lacking right now in the Marathon Alpha. Well, they said the following: still iterating on exterior lighting and visuals, says game director. A lot of the things you see, we're still iterating on, especially for our exteriors. We're looking at additional iterations on our lighting model. We're going to be iterating through a lot of those visuals, according to Joe Ziegler. Now, Paul Tassi actually took a screenshot of my thread on the post. So here's what I was actually writing in real time. I'm doing my best to type fast. Joku, he's a player asking a question. Graphics outside don't look great. I want to tell people what's going on with that. Ziegler said, a lot of the things you see we're still iterating on, especially for our exteriors. We're looking at additional iterations on our lighting model. We're going to be iterating through a lot of those visuals. Witz chimed in and said, it's not just the characters as well. We're evaluating things like materials, glass, characters, etc. We're having meetings on the characters twice a week at this point. And one of the points that I didn't see get picked up, basically what I did is I went through all the tweets and saw what people were latching onto. I really, really like the sound conversation where Witz really dove into how the sound is going to be impacted. They're going to work right now on how it sounds when you're walking on glass or grass, how you're walking in water and what that sounds like versus what it sounds like when you're walking on a grate or something metallic, how your footsteps should be louder. How is that impacted when you're walking versus running? Because the game really is about player versus player encounters and how you deal with that. And I do think that a lot of players are wondering, hey, I can't hear opponents half the time. I would love to know if you're working on that. And I actually concur with that criticism. I think robots are loud as heck and human beings are much quieter. To me, turn down the robots a little bit and humans just need to be louder. Footsteps need to be echoing in my ear. I would rather have the human footsteps be too loud than too quiet. And right now, there's times where I have had a smoke character jump through the window from below, and I had no idea there was another person anywhere near me. It's also hard to distinguish between your teammates and colleagues and such. So, versus an enemy team, and I think that could be tweaked also. Speaking of, consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell. Obviously, I'm going to continue covering Marathon. The response has been quite positive to me doing this show. I know some people aren't into it, but the people who are into it are tuning in. So thank you if you've watched so far. And if you want more on Marathon, I mean, I'm going to be covering it. I played the alpha for 20 hours, and September is a ways off. Now, on the lore, Bungie did acknowledge that alien race that isn't present in the game. I think folks want to know or ask about where certain aliens are and stuff like that. I'm just not saying anything else. We know that you're asking where they are and stuff like that via Destin Legary. So they are acknowledging that we are asking questions about the world of Marathon, about the lore of that universe that they built. And they're saying that stuff is on the way. It's not happening today, but it will be there in the future. And what's really interesting is we know there's a third and fourth map being teased. I believe they specifically were referring to the third and fourth maps. It's Outpost and UESC Marathon. They're going to be revealed before launch. We found that out. And this was from Ellie. He asked about the third and fourth map. I believe he asked about both maps, and he said, all Ziegler said was, you'll see a lot more about that soon. I'm paraphrasing. If it's not in quotes, it's a paraphrase. If it's in quotes, it's a direct quote. Definitely before launch, you'll see that. You'll definitely be seeing more about what drives the game forward. I wish he would have got the second tweet in there. But long story short, they did tease new locations and what you can expect from the world going forward. They also talked a lot about story and PvE elements. So I was asking Lars Bakken for a little bit more about, what is he doing in the game? He's the guy who does all of the world events, and we've heard stories about how this AI voice will chime in and start talking to you. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. So I asked him about that, and he said, we want to pay off that old lore. We hold those old games very highly. This is basically the next game in the series. Expect some of those things you appreciated and enjoyed, like the interrupted broadcast. Those are fun things. We're laying some seeds there. The most interesting thing about the thing the team makes is the possibility of other players being around. If it was silent, that just doesn't work. You want to have that tension and the risk versus reward. He's talking about the PvE elements there, to be clear. So when you're doing an incursion, which is this battle where you're fighting the bots, that would be pretty easy if you were just fighting the bots. You add the player element to it, you're making noise, you could be luring in those other players, and it does add that element, and he does have that right. Over the weekend, he gives an example. I was playing Holler, and I literally heard the laptop go off on the second floor. There's a room on the second floor where you have to clear the gas. He ended up sneaking up there with his teammates and destroying the team and then getting all the loot. He says it was amazing. That is the kind of experience we want to build around. It's an experience we have around the level. On secrets, things aren't done yet, and we don't want to give them away just yet. Listen to Vulcan, Oni, what they're saying at the start of the match. It's just the beginning, etc. The teams have been building this pretty awesome framework and narrative to build this stuff in. Ziegler said, there's an expectation, I think, that we have of ourselves that we're trying to push into both the service of the game and also the base game and everything that comes along with that. Some of it is more than what you think it is. We're not focused on telling you a story like you typically do. We want to leave you wondering what lies between the gaps. In a lot of ways, you're the detective and Tau Ceti is the crime scene. So I think it's going to be more like the way that storytelling is done in Elden Ring and done in the Dark Souls games, where if you really want to go out and find that stuff, find the nitty-gritty details about what ended up happening with that rogue AI, you can find those things, but it might be via a method of seeking it out versus it being told directly to you. Aki, the player, about heat management says, are there plans to have heat be impacted by the weather or if you're hiding in a pond, etc.? Currently, right now, that is actually actively in the game. If it's raining, for example, you get lower heat consumption, which is really great. A lot of people were asking about the black market, and long story short, there were like 3 people who asked about the black market or wanted player trading. Bungie basically said that they are working on the black market. That was the next question on that thread, which is why I'm bringing it up. And the reason I bring that up is because specifically on the black market, they indicated that the kits are potentially going to be able to be upgraded later on by leveling up each of the merchants. I think that's something they were planning for season 1 of the game. And I think that is an interesting way to do it. Because right now, I would rather go into a game if I'm just looking for basic materials with nothing so that I don't lose any of my key loot for the runs where I actually want to go in and engage with other players. And they are at a bit of an odd spot in that respect. How is matchmaking being handled? They're still gathering information right now, but one of the key things they're working on is separating newer players from more experienced players in the session. And they talked about that also in respect to how they want to queue you. So basically for the first 10 hours of the game, you don't have map knowledge, you don't know what you're doing. And if you're going in with a bunch of people who have all of that, you're just going to get nuked most of the time. However, on the inverse side, they also don't want people gaining the system. So if you're going to bring in a low-level character, you're not going to get pulled down. That low-level character is going to get pulled up into hard mode with you, and you're going to have to do a little bit extra work to get them kitted out. Separately, I remember during the conversation, they talked about how later in a season in Marathon, the gear will get better because they're going to see player attrition and it's going to be harder for a new player to get caught up. So there is a chance that loot will be improved the further into a season you are. And I actually think that's kind of a smart model because you don't want to go in and get stomped. Ziegler said, there's an expectation, I think, that we have of ourselves that we're trying to push. I actually already covered off on this about the storytelling. This one was really good. Okay, so weapon mods. Not a lot of people have talked about the weapon mods, and this was really, really interesting because he basically said, we want gold mods to take a gun and make it slap. We want that. He gave examples about the Burt with a gold mod firing all 3 bullets at once, or the Magnum with a sniper scope, which basically makes it a pocket sniper. There's just this, oh, hell yeah bar with gold mods that are pretty high for us right now. It's just about a little bit more time to cook versus us trying to be too restrictive. Not a lot of people have found any gold mods in the match at all. So that's what he's discussing there. But that sounds really, really compelling. So if you get a really good gold mod that you want to put on a gun, that is going to change how that gun works and make it super powerful. In the same vein, they also talked about removing mods and the cost to remove mods. That is something that they're looking at. They're trying to find a better system than destroying it, basically, if you take it off of a gun and want to put it on a different one. So they are having that conversation. And with the chipset, basically, they're talking about just having more of those be interchangeable as opposed to having like one chip that does the same thing on one gun as another, but they're different things just taking up your inventory space. I have noticed that. It's annoying. What do you say about not having enough time between now and the September release date? This is to like refine the game and make it better, right? The build is a month behind, 2 months behind actually. What I will say in general is development is not as linear as you might think. What you might think takes a lot of time to do typically is not what takes a lot of time to do. There's a lot of iteration and a lot of feature iteration we can do in 6 months. So interesting stuff. And yeah, I guess suppose while we're here, we can talk about the suppressor question from Tweety. He wanted suppressors, and Wits indicated that they want to do it, but they're trying to figure out how to do it. like removing of audio. If there's a suppressor that suppresses your movement, that's too much of a buff almost. But they're trying to figure out what they could do in that respect. But what could they do that's evil but not too evil? And I started thinking about that. Like, what if you shoot a player and they're just constantly pinged with their movement? And instead of suppressing your gun sound, what if you're suppressing the team in another way? And they did say when you shoot an enemy in the field, basically you should be slowing them down and you should see a negative impact to their movement. And last but not least, just Scaro also tweeted, he was on the call and he said, Joe Ziegler just confirmed we will 1000% be hearing more about the end game puzzles and secret stuff within Marathon before launch within the next few months. Very, very good move. And I can't wait to see what they talk about and tease. So there was this big call and a lot was gone over, but it does get me a little bit more excited about where Marathon is going and what could be around the corner for this game. I've really had an interesting relationship with this game. I have had nights where I sign on and I'm just getting chased down and wrecked. And it's really, really frustrating and not fun. I was playing with Fran actually last night and CJ, and it was a good time, two good friends of mine. And it was a good time with my friends, but that doesn't make the game good. And that is always something that I'm considering when I'm critiquing a product. Am I having fun because I'm having fun with my friends, or am I having fun because the game is good? And I'm not sure where Marathon falls right now. When we were getting nuked, I didn't want to play the game anymore. When we were making progress with our priority missions or whatever we were working on as a team, that felt really, really fun. And say what you will about Marathon, I do think it has that let's just get one more game in feel, unless it turns you off from the get-go. So you're either going to be in the boat of, I'm going to stick with this a little bit longer and give it a shot, and then you will be in, or you are going to bounce in the first 2 hours. I don't think that's necessarily good for Bungie. I think if you play this game and it's a big turnoff to you, you're not going to come back. And they really need to get players invested early on. I think separating the player pool is going to do that. I think having a little bit more lore investment is going to do that. But they are very clear about what this game is. This is a PvP game with PvE elements that distract you, but they keep the tension up with those PvP elements constantly. So you will be engaging with other players and fighting them, and they are figuring out how to balance all of that right now. I am going to be very curious to see how this game does. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. If you do enjoy my content, I greatly appreciate it. A huge shout out to all the patron backers. I just had an interview with Ben Starr. If you're watching this in the future, it will be live on YouTube someday, but it's available for a week exclusively over on patreon.com/SaveStatePlus. We talk about Claire Obscure, we talk about his acting, and a big shout out to big backers like Christopher Eddy, Inner Machine, Philaroni, Spingetter, and Aries, who empower me to make content like this, as well as all of the other backers. So subscribe, support, whatever you would like to do. I appreciate all of you, and I hope that was some good Marathon intel for your ears. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you for the next one.